good evening. It's Tuesday, January 30th, and welcome back to Everyday Talk 24/7. As you can see, the sun is about to set behind me, but it's a really beautiful day here in the Midlands of South Carolina. I wanted to go over a question that was asked in the last Q&A Friday on the difference between testing and temptation and the difference between the two. I thought it was a really great question that Natalia sent in, and I know not all of you get a chance to look at the Q&A videos as much, but it's such an important distinction. I wanted to devote a separate video tonight, actually two videos, because we're going to talk about the difference between testing and temptation tonight, and then what happens when anger enters in. We'll do that tomorrow night, or tomorrow at some point. When we get angry because we lose sight of what the purpose of the trial, the testing is all about. But that's for tomorrow. So tonight, let me go back over what we talked about last Friday on the Q&A portion and take another look at it here. We're looking at James, looking at the first chapter, looking at verses 2 through 15, and with there's a little explanation that we won't deal with tonight. But let me read the first verses for us here, verses 2 through 5. Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything, being perfect in everything. In other words, being whole, being complete. James is about thirsting for this completeness, this wholeness. And the trials that God gives to us help make us whole. That's why James is saying to be joyful. Consider it pure joy when you face these trials. They're not random. God is not asleep at the switch. As I like to say, he's not on coffee break. These things are coming to grow us, to build us, to strengthen us. Just as the writer of Hebrews says, when you encounter hardship, realize that that's the loving discipline of the Lord, blessing you and encouraging you. So that's the opening statement. When I face a trial, facing something challenging for me, I consider it joy. Now to do this, I need wisdom. And verses 5 through 8 talk about that. I'm not going to talk about that tonight, but that's the context. That's why I need wisdom. To look at this and say, wait a minute, this is not a time to be down. This is not a time to be in the dumps or be discouraged or think that God has abandoned me. Just the opposite. God is growing and perfecting my faith because it finishes its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking in anything. So these trials are not random. They're given to us by God for the specific purpose of growing us and strengthening us. All right, then we're going to go to verse 12. The stuff in the middle is really interesting, but we don't have time to do that. But verse 12 then says, blessed is the man, the person, child, boy, girl, male, female, whatever. Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial, because, restating verse 4, because when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. So again, we can receive, this is why we receive these trials with joy. Joy doesn't mean giddiness, doesn't mean uncontrolled happiness and weirdness. It means that you are seeing a more perfect thing happening of God. He's perfecting me, he's loving me, he's drawing me close to me, he's making me complete. Wow. What a beautiful, beautiful thing that he's doing for us. So, but here comes the catch. The catch now is when we start wandering into how a trial can become a temptation. Verse 13, when tempted, no one should say God is tempting me. In other words, I can take this trial and say I'm being tempted. No, it's a trial from God. But if I look at it as a temptation, then I got to realize that where does that temptation come from? God is not tempting me. When tempted, no one should say God is tempting me, for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. So God's not doing the tempting. Tempting's coming from the bad guys. So, he does not tempt anyone, but each one is tempted when, by his own evil desires, he is dragged away and enticed. In other words, instead of receiving it with joy, I buy into the temptation. And I say, I'm going to explore pleasure. I'm going to be upset. I'm going to be mad. I'm going to be persecuted. I'm going to be all these things. When that happens, you wander into temptation and open the door to all kinds of problems. We get dragged away and enticed. Verse 14, but each one is tempted when, by his own evil desires, he is dragged away and enticed. So when you realize that, when you start getting bitter and angry, when you start pursuing your own pleasure and lust, and I've got to have this, or I've got to pursue this pleasure, I've got to have this thing. When I go down that route, I understand I'm not receiving this with joy. I'm receiving it either bitter, angry, or I'm lusting after something. I'm desiring my own pleasure. At that point, we have the opportunity to repent right away, turn to God, and then receive it as joy. So I've got a way of recovery here. But when I don't pursue that, verse 15 says, but then after this desire is conceived, when you give birth to it, when you don't see it for joy, but you see it as an account to be angry, upset, mad, hurt, frustrated, or a license to pursue your own pleasure or lust, what that does, the desire is conceived within you. It gives birth to sin, and sin, when it's full grown, gives birth to death. So you see what James is telling us. If I don't grasp this particular sin, this particular test, as something to see this is an opportunity to grow closer to God, to be united with Him, that God is giving this to me to grow me, to strengthen me, to test me in the right kind of way. If I don't do that, then I open the door to temptation. It's very clear what he's saying here. When I look at the trials and I'm joyful, Lord, thank you for this opportunity to grow, to learn, to care for someone, to rely on you when I feel weak and helpless. When that happens, that's occasion for joy. But if I don't see it that way, I give in to it, either lusting after the pleasure or feeling like this trial is too much for me, or feeling like I'm just, God has abandoned me. Everyone's left me alone. Everyone has just walked away from me. When that happens, I lose joy and I gain the ugliness of temptation. And then it has its way with me. It lures me away, pulls me away. It gives birth to sin, and the impact of my life is dramatic and severe and harsh. So that's the difference. I receive a trial. Wow, Lord, thank you. This is an opportunity to grow and learn and be closer to you. Or I can turn away from that, be frustrated, do my own thing, pursue my own pleasure. Now that trial becomes a temptation. And if I yield to that temptation, then I walk right into Satan's trap, right into the enemy's trap. And I'm in real trouble then. So that's the difference from that. What we're going to look at tomorrow is that if I buy into this, if I don't receive it as joy, it turns into anger. But that's for tomorrow. But this is a powerful encouragement to us. When something bad happens, God didn't forget you. He's testing you, growing you, giving the opportunity to draw closer to Him, to be full and complete and mature. And that's a reason for pure joy and knowing the Spirit's fruit. I hope that's helpful. Get back to me on the thoughts again. Such a great concept and question. Thanks again for Natalia for raising it. And again, give me thoughts and feedback. This is so important for us. And tomorrow we'll look at how failing to go this route opens the door to our anger, which makes it even worse. So you have a great evening, and Lord willing, we'll see you tomorrow on the last day of January. Good night. Thank you for watching. May God richly bless you as you seek to live for His glory.